I will end this talk with some thought on secularism and national education, because I'll give the example, maybe the simplest way to look at it is that at IIT Gandhinagar, I bumped into the husband of a visiting faculty from abroad. This gentleman was brought up in erstwhile Yugoslavia, today Serbia. So he went to school and he studied at school Mahabharata, Ramayana, and Bhagavad Gita. This was part of the curriculum. This is what he told me. So I told him that this is taboo in India. There's no hope to study Mahabharata, Ramayana, Gita. He could not believe it. He could not believe it. He said, how come the Indian school system does not teach that? We had to study it at school, not the whole of it. A little bit of the main plot of the stories and some chapters and some passages. It was not, of course, a full study. So this is the whole question. Why don't we? Because we are supposed to have a secular education, right? And even Sanskrit was objected to by a certain class of intellectuals because Sanskrit was supposed to have a religious, spiritual background and therefore should not be taught. It took the Supreme Court's judgment, Kuldeep Singh, in, I think, 1990 something, I forget the precise date, to pass a judgment which is quite enlightening. Luckily, he was a Sikh. Had he been a Hindu, he would have been very heavily criticized, but nobody could say anything, where he explained at length that Sanskrit is central to our heritage and its teaching at the school level cannot be said to be unsecular. It is very strange that it took a judgment of the Supreme Court to reassure us that the teaching of Sanskrit would not be unsecular. The greatest fear that some of our intellectuals seem to have. So would it be unsecular to teach some lessons? Of course, not the whole text. It would take the 12 years of the schooling system to go through the entire Mahabharata, Ramayana, and so on. There is no question of that. But would it be unsecular to expose our children to the main teachings, the main story plot of these stories, which after all, did manage in culturally integrating ancient India, which is a fact, easy to demonstrate. All the way to the tribal world, the stories, the various episodes, the heroes, and I was going to say moral lesson, but moral is a very poor word. Anyway, the ethical or the dharmic lessons, whatever you want to call them, did travel to every nook and corner, not only of India, but Southeast Asia and Central Asia, and even partly to China and Japan. So would it be unsecular to teach these or similar texts that have great ethical lessons, say the Panchatantra? How many schools teach the Panchatantra or simply give? So we have a great paradox here, as far as I am concerned, which is that everybody laments about loss of value. Just open today's newspaper and see the number of horrific crimes, and everybody says, as a society we've gone astray, we've lost all values. Fine, maybe we have, but where do these values come from? So we say, well, in the 1980s, the Ministry of Human Resource Development said, we will have value education. So we'll have special lessons for value education, probably on Saturday morning or something. Those few hours of value education, first of all, became very boring because they ended up being just some kind of a preaching, which of course school students would resent. Number two, they were very soon encroached upon by the mathematics class and the science classes and so on, because that is what you needed at the exam anyway. You didn't need value education at the exam, right? Who needs value education at the +2 exam? Who? So therefore, we have secularized, if I may say so, in Indian school education, it's not secularized, it's that we have deculturalized it. And there is certainly a way to present Indian culture without demanding that the listener should turn into, let us say, a devotee of Sri Krishna or Rama. So if you wish, you can keep that aspect out and simply have the story, have the, why did the Pandavas had to fight the Kauravas? What was the big idea behind this bloodshed? What is this whole tension in the Gita between Arjuna's gospel of ahimsa almost, and Sri Krishna's spurring him to war, etc. All these big questions. Why does Yudhishthira himself, why does he have to lie to win the war? Why does Arjuna treacherously kill his brother Karna, and so on? All these big questions which are about ethics, which are about dharma, which try to define and discuss dharma, do not need the so-called religious aspect. That could be kept separate. So therefore, we have a problem there that we complain against the loss of values, but we have slowly but surely eliminated out of the educational system what have been, after all, the great texts that have imparted certain values to the society. So I would like to simply read this quotation by Shri Aurobindo. This was written in 1908, 1909, when he was not yet known as Shri Aurobindo. He was Aurobindo Ghosh in Bengal, and he was one of the leaders of the revolutionary movement, writing in a daily called Vande Mataram, after, of course, Bankim's song, and later on in another weekly called Karma Yogin. And this is what he writes. And please note that Shri Aurobindo had a experience, direct, hands-on experience of the Indian educational system, because he taught himself, first of all at Baroda, when he returned to India, under the Maharaja's college. He taught French and English and a few other topics, and then he was called to the Bengal National College in Calcutta, 1905, which was the first Swadeshi institution of education, national education, and he became its first principal. And there he taught not only literature, French, English, but also history and geography. So he was familiar with the Indian system, which of course in those days was the British system. And this is what he writes. He says, in India, we have been cut off by a mercenary, this is a very consciously used word, and soulless education from all our ancient roots of culture and tradition. National education, in case you think that he wants to take us back to a, long dead tradition, orthodox, narrow, and so on and so forth. Not at all. This is what he says, is the education which, starting with the past and making full use of the present, builds up a great nation. Whoever wishes to cut off the nation from its past is no friend of our national growth. Whoever fails to take advantage of the present is losing us the battle of life. We must therefore, and this is a whole agenda you might say, we must therefore save for India all that she has stored up of knowledge, character, and noble thought in her immemorial past. We must acquire for her the best knowledge that Europe can give her and assimilate it to her own peculiar type of national temperament. He is therefore not at all opposed to Western knowledge of any sort. We must introduce the best methods of teaching humanity has developed, whether modern or ancient. And all these we must harmonize into a system which will be impregnated with the spirit of self-reliance. This was, of course, the glorious age of Swadeshi in Bengal, so as to build up men and not machines. So how far have we progressed in our educational thinking from those days? And time permitting, I could give you many more quotations from Rabindranath Tagore, from Gandhi, from all the great leaders of the freedom movement on what should a system of national education be. And all of them agreed on a simple point, that it should be rooted in the best of Indian culture. The best, I use purposely these terms because not all of Indian culture is necessarily relevant or desirable, right? So this is what they wanted. Is it what independent India did? I'm afraid not. So here we have the, running through this quotation, the word secularism does not appear, but it runs through it. And by supposedly secularizing education, what we have done is to simply deculturalize young Indians. And my own experience, I teach a course on the foundations of Indian civilization at IIT Gandhinagar at the master's level. My own experience is that young Indians, my apologies, are terribly ignorant about their own country. That doesn't mean that you should be scholars of the Shastras and so on, not at all. I don't mean any sort of orthodox knowledge. I mean understanding what has made this civilization tick through, we say usually 5,000 years. It's not a bad figure if you want to include the Harappan civilization, that's okay. So what has made it tick through those 5 millennia when other civilizations did disappear? Ancient Greece is no more. The modern Egyptian has no connection with the pyramids or the pharaohs at all. But we still have a lot of living connections with that remote past. And therefore, it must be something that has somehow given strength to the people despite all these social problems, issues, sometimes defects and sometimes unacceptable discriminations. And I would like to remind you that no society on earth has been perfect. And European Western societies have had their share of dark spots. You know, world wars were not the contribution of India. Genocides, concentration camps, slave trade are things which never occurred in this land. So therefore, yes, dark spots by all means, but there were also bright spots. Why not use them? If they can contribute strength, if they can help build up this social harmony that we are all thirsting for, at least there is no disagreement that all of us want social harmony, why not use these elements that can contribute to it? So these are some of my imperfect, brief thoughts that I wanted to share with you, and they are not meant as a final answer. They are simply meant to trigger, hopefully, a debate, but a real debate, a meaningful debate where we're not afraid to call a spade, and where we are not abusing each other, because as far as I have seen in recent years, there has not been a meaningful debate on secularism. There's been a lot of mudslinging, a lot of demonization, maybe on both sides, I don't know, on 3 sides or on 4 sides, whatever it may be, but we are not yet intellectually mature enough to debate calmly across known disagreements. Known disagreements. We know that we would disagree on certain things, but we cannot debate on the basis of this. So if I can have contributed even in a small way, I'll be more than happy. Thank you very much.